Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this introduction to Android Instant Apps. So my name is Cyril Mottier, and as you may have understood, this talk will be given in English, but I'm French, so if you want to ask questions at the end of this talk, please feel free to ask them in French if necessary. So I'm really proud to be here, or glad to be here today, because I actually submitted this talk to the call for paper last year. But Instant App was not actually in the public domain. It was under NDA, so I couldn't do a conference about this. And this year, I'm here to finally talk about Instant App, but it's not actually working. So everything that is in these slides are kind of working. It depends really on the system, but it will be working soon. That's what Google said. Just one note on this, because some people ask me. Yes, I spent literally 2.5 hours doing this. You know, resizing icons, but I love it, so 2 hours spent for a good thing. So Instant App really starts from one simple situation. When you want to install an application on an Android device, it requires you to do a lot of stuff. The first thing you have to do is obviously to know the application you want to download. So most of the time, it starts about learning about the app, and it may be from a friend of yours, from a social network, etc. So once you know that, you will start looking for the app. So you can do it in the Google Launcher app, you can go to the Play Store, and once you found it, you will get to the detail page on the Play Store. On that detail page, you will have like a lot of information about this application, obviously some screenshots, some ratings, some description, and one interesting button right inside this, which is called Install. And as you may have understood, Install will, install the application. So you click on it, and then you wait. You wait sometimes for 2 seconds, 5 seconds, maybe 10, maybe 1 minute, depending on your connectivity. And once the package has been downloaded, you have to wait once again for the system to install your application. And finally, once it's done, you end up with a notification. And sometimes, depending on your settings, an icon on the launcher that gets displayed. So you can finally click on that notification, and you end up in the main screen of the application. So as you may understand here, it's quite a tedious and long process, or a long and steep path, because you have to first find the application on the Play Store, install the app, wait for the installation. After that, you have to start the application. Sometimes you may have to connect to your account, so yeah, connecting takes time too. And finally, you can use the app. So potentially, you may spend like maybe 2 or 3 minutes trying to do that. So Instant App is really a way to try to solve that. So the idea is really to reduce the friction, okay? To reduce the friction as much as possible, because obviously there will always be some friction. But Instant App try to reduce in 2 ways. The first way is that it will reduce the friction in searching and sharing an application, and then it will reduce the friction in installing the application itself, okay? So if we had to sum up what Instant App is, it would be Instant App is native application without installation. So it's basically the benefits of native application without the drawbacks. So how does it look? Okay, so let's say I receive an SMS here telling me to check out this good session about Android Instant App, and you remember the problem Instant App is solving is sharing sharing the app, and this is done actually using some very common pattern that you all know, which is called hyperlinks. And in this case, what we will do is that sharing an application is actually done automatically just when you share an HTTP, an hyperlink, sorry, because it's something that we're all familiar with. Once you click on it, you won't this time, because you're used to that, what you're used to right now is to open directly the app if it's already installed, or go to your favorite browser, so like Chrome, for instance. But in the case of Instant App, the Instant App runtime will first check whether or not there is an Instant App available for this link, and if there is one, it will automatically install, download it as quickly as possible and install it as quickly as possible. So no need to, I don't know, tap on the install button or whatever. And once it's done, you get redirected directly to the screen you asked for, just by tapping on a link. So you tap on a link, and you get a native application displaying your screen. So from the UX point of view, this is pretty much the whole story. So it's really having native applications tied to an hyperlink. So this is the story. So how does it work under the hood? So everything starts from a very simple point of view, which is that when you download an application, you always download 1% of it at once, but sometimes you only use 10%, for instance. Let's say maybe 15 or 20, but most of the time you don't use 100% of it. Because from the Play Store point of view, an application is considered as like atomic or monolithic. And this is served entirely or not served at all. This is really the way it is. So you have obviously some workarounds like APK expansion files used in games mostly, but this is not something that you can use in well, you can use it, but it's really targeted to games. So it's not something that is really tied to application in general. Another example of that problem is the Android Wear distribution system. This has changed with Android Wear 2, but with Android Wear 1.0, when you download an application that has an Android Wear application, you have to download everything, even if you don't have an Android Wear device. So, you have to download some binary that is not necessary for your own case. So if we look at this from a very simple schema, you get this. An application is seen as a very atomic and monolithic stuff from the store point of view. So it's basically a giant piece of code and resources. But actually, if you look inside this application, you will notice that it's made of features, several features. Like here, in this case, we have feature 1, feature 2, and feature 3. And they are all based on a common stuff, okay? And this common is what is called common in this case is kind of a framework of your own. This is something that you've developed on your own, and that all of your features in your application is based on and rely on. So this is where Instant App try to. This is what Instant App tries to solve. So the build output actually depends now on the targeting run mode. So whether you're trying to build an instant installable application or an instant app application, you will end up with a different binary output. So in the case of an installable application, you end up with something that you're all used to, which is an APK. So an APK is just a zip file, and in this APK you have a bunch of resources and code, but from your point of view, from a feature point of view, I would say, there is only the features and the common, your framework, that is bundled inside a single file. From the Instant App point of view, this will be a little bit different, because you won't get like a single APK. You will get several APKs that gets bundled inside a single zip, okay? And you will upload this zip file on the Play Store. So as you may have seen here, base is actually the APK that contains your common source code, okay? So feature 1 will actually rely on base APK, feature 2 will actually rely on base APK, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the output, how the output look like. But from an undevoiced behavior, well, there is also a little bit difference between installable applications and instant app applications. So instead of having, in the case of an installable application, to download everything like this, when you want to use the app, you have to download everything. The instant app will be a little bit different. So let's say you want to use feature 1 in your instant application. So what the Play Store will do is that it won't download everything. It will only download the necessary parts. So we'll download the feature, obviously, but because the feature is relying on a base module, it will download also the base APK. If you're only using the feature 2, then you will download feature 2 and once again the base APK. I think you get the point here. So if I want to use feature 1 and then feature 2, I will first download feature 1 and the base APK. And when using the feature 2, well, you can download the feature 2, but you don't have to re-download the base APK. So you will download only the feature 2 APK like this. So it reduces the amount of data that gets transmitted when you want to use the application. If you use all of the features, at what point in time you get all of the features downloaded and installed on the device. So that's pretty much how Instant App is working. So it's basically breaking an application into several parts that can be downloaded independently and installed independently. So regarding the requirements, so there is not that much of requirements. Actually, Instant App is working on Lollipop and above, which means basically that you can target more than 500 million devices. So it's natively supported in Android or Oreo, so the latest version of Android, but there is like a backport, I would say, in the Play Store, which installs an Instant App runtime that will make possible for you to use an Instant application on before Android Oreo. And from the developer point of view, you have to have Android Studio 3.0 or above, but right now it's only 3.0. And it contains, obviously, the Instant Apps SDK. And this SDK comes with an emulator that supports Instant Apps, new Gradle plugins, so we will see that later, but you have new Gradle plugin to build new kind of application on Android, some refactoring tools, some app link support, and you will see that there is also two SDK, and to be honest, I don't know why there is two different SDK, one bundle completely outside of the Play Store and the Play services, and another one inside the Play services. But there is two different SDKs. So prior turning your existing application into an Instant application, you have to deal with something called the runtime permissions. So if you're Android developers, I guess you already know about this. And if you're not supporting it, then you should, because it's been introduced in Android 6.0. And it consists on asking at runtime the permission that you're requiring in your application. So this is quite an obvious requirement because we're trying to reduce the friction between installation, a click on a tap on a link and being able to use the application. So you don't want to have like a middle screen asking the user, hey, does this app can this app use the, I don't know, the internet or the camera? So you really have to deal with runtime permission in order to make an Instant application. And the other thing that you have to deal with is app links. So app links is basically associating your website, your domain, with your application. And this is, if you were here last year, this is what I talked about. So we will do like a quick summary of what you have to do to support app links. So if we go to our manifest, you end up with that kind of intent filters. So these intent filters are used to, well, like you can consider them as URL matchers. So here we are saying that all hosts/licenses links are actually belonging to my application, right? And there is only something that is new normally from an Android developer point of view, which is this Android auto-verify attribute. And here it's set true. So it's not in the documentation if you look at the Android manifest structure. I don't know why, still not available. But for me, the only true updated reference is r.attr. So you can go to this page and you will have some documentation about it. But what it does is that it informs the system that at installation time, the association with this app, from this app to the website has to be verified and checked. So this is pretty much the only thing that you have to do in your Android application. So how can the system, associate your application with your domain? Well, you have to put something on the domain to certify that you're the owner of the domain. And this is done using something called digital asset links.json file. So you have to put like a file at this exact location, right? So .well-known /asset links.json, and it has to be at this exact location, and it has to be served using content type application JSON and with also a 200 response code. So if you're trying to do redirection like 300 something, it won't work. So it really has to be 200. And what this file contains is pretty much like a delegation. So this file is a bunch of delegation blocks, and in this case, you can see that the source will give a relation to the target. So the source is obviously the website. Well, this relation is delegating the right to handle URLs, and the target, in our case, is the Android application. So you define the target just by using the namespace Android app. You pass a package name. In this case, it's the package name of the application. And finally, it contains also the fingerprint of the APK you're using, right? So this is pretty much it. So as you can see here, we're only associating one app to one domain, but it's possible to have like several apps for the same domain. This is especially useful when you have debug applications that are signed with different keys. So you can have different targets here, or you can have several domains. For instance, if you look at maps.google.fr.google.uk, there is a lot of domains for Google Maps. So there will be only one app, which is the Google Maps Android application, and several domains. So you can do that too. And once you've done that, well, your application is instant app ready. I mean, from a developer point of view. The only thing that you have to do is to really modularize your code so that the Play Store can download only the necessary parts. And this is possible by modularizing your code on your own. So you have to point out, to break the app into features. And in order to do that, you have to, well, look at your application and decide what are the features of your application. So I've used the DevFest application because I've done it, and I was actually looking at it. And for me, there was actually kind of three features. The first one was licenses, which only displays the licenses screen. The second one was the about screen, and the third one was the sessions feature. So ideally speaking, I would have put the schedule in the sessions feature APK in the instant app, but because it was not working, I can't test it. So I decided to keep that into the installable application. But ideally speaking, it would be like three different features: licenses, about, and sessions. And in our case, what we will have is that we have two features, one for licenses and one for about, and the schedule is actually only part of the installable application, where actually licenses will be both in instant app and installable application. And in order to do that, you have to, you don't have to think about features as like entry points. You really have to think about features like as what you can do with your app. So licenses is really something different from the rest of the app. About is something that can run independently from the rest of the app. And once again, the schedule is something that can run independently from the rest of the app. So this is how you break your application into different features. So what about the base APK that I told you? So the base APK is really about containing code and resources that is used in all of your modules. So this is really the code that is related to everything. So some example in the case of the DevFest application is the application icon, because we want to share the application icon between an instant app or an installable application. As you may have seen, there is also use of custom fonts, a downloadable font. So this has to be in both the installable and instant application. So this is in the base APK. Command styles, dimension, colors, even the implementation of the base activity or base fragment that I'm using. Some utilities, etc., etc. So you can put a lot of stuff in the base APK, but keep in mind that it has to be as small as possible, obviously. And there is actually a tool in Android Studio that can help you to do that, and it's called Modularize. So you can Command-Shift-A, from what I remember, and type Modularize, and it will ask you if you want to export the activity or fragment or whatever you're actually displaying into a single module. So this is pretty handy if you want to modularize everything into a single module. The thing is, it's actually only working in Java project, and I wrote that in Kotlin, so I had to do that on my own. But I'm really expecting Kotlin support for the next version of the Android Studio. And once you've done all of those modules, you have to, tell the system, the build system, that you need to create, the build system has to create both an instant app and an installable application. So you have to go to the settings.gradle. So settings.gradle will point to all of the modules from your application. So in our case, in this case, I have 5 different modules. The first one, obviously, is the app, which is the installable application, right? So it's if you're only developing Android right now, normally you have only one module, which is your app. Then you have what is called a feature module, so a feature-based module. So this feature-based module is here included in the settings.gradle. And then you have all of your features module, like about and licenses. And finally, you have an instant app module, which will only tell to the Gradle plugin that an instant app is made of several modules. So if we deep dive into the build.gradle for the base module, you can see that it's no different from what we're used to. There is only 2 main differences. The first one is the plugin that we're using. We're not using com.android.application anymore because we're building a feature. So we need to apply the plugin com.android.feature. Yeah, that's pretty natural. And you have to inform the system, the Gradle plugin, that this is actually your base feature. So this is the only line that you have to add in your Android DSL, which is base feature is equal to true. So it will inform the Gradle plugin that this feature is the base feature. And finally, if you look at the dependencies, you have, this is kind of weird here because we're trying to have like a one-way dependency, but actually the build system needs a two-way dependency. So the base feature module will actually depend on the application and the feature project, and this is actually for the base feature to know about the application ID of your project. So it has to be here. But it's not really a dependency. It's really about just knowing about the application ID. And that's pretty much it. So here you have your base feature. If you look at your features, like licenses and about, in our case, well, you apply the same plugin because it's a feature, so com.android.feature, and you put a single dependency, which is the base feature, okay, the base feature module. And that's pretty much it. If you go now to your application is made of several features, so you're still using the com.android.application Gradle plugin, and the dependencies will be all of the features that you want to be bundled inside the installable APK. And for the instant app, here there is something once again new if you're an Android developer, which is we're using a different Gradle plugin, which is com.android.instantApp. And the dependencies here are all the features that you want to be bundled inside your instant APK. So here you can see that the installable app and the instant app are using the exact same feature, but it would be possible to have features that are in the instant app application, but not in the installable application, or vice versa. You can do whatever you want here. So this is pretty much it, what you have to do. Once you've done that, well, you have an instant application. But there is some performance issues or limitations, obviously, and mostly regarding the size of the application. So don't be scared, don't run away. This is quite simple. So I've put some math here, but the idea is really to give you an understanding about the size of the binary you're downloading. So whenever you're doing an instant application, the total bundle size will be obviously the size of all of the modules, a sum of all of the feature modules that you will create. So it's the base module plus all feature module. That's it. But there is actually a limitation because you have to make sure that the size of the base APK plus the maximum size of the feature APK has to be inferior to M. So what is this maximum bundle size? It's actually the limitation that the Play Store installs so that you don't bundle like 20 megabytes or 100 megabytes, because otherwise it will take like a long time for the user to get your app, install the application. So there is actually 3 different values for this M. And M may be infinite, so during development, for instance, you have no limitation. So you can, it's really nice if you want to prototype something because you have no limit. And it's also nice to do a proof of concept if you want to show that to your product owner. Hey, look at that, it's working. You don't have to care about the size of the application because there is no limitation. When you're using a development track on the Play Store, then the limitation is brought to 10 megabytes. So this is useful for alpha testing, or if you want to, test in real situations. So really using the Play Store. And finally, if you're in production, this limitation is brought to 4 megabytes. So this is the maximum size of the bundle size that you can have when using an instant application. So when I'm saying it's a limit, it doesn't mean that you have to reach that limit. It's the complete opposite. So you have to be, if you're like, I don't know, 1 megabytes, it's way better than 4 megabytes. So always try to be as small as possible. Because it's really an upper bound, not a lower bound. So in general, and this is not something that is only for Instant App. The smaller, the better. And this is not specific to Android. This is not specific to Instant App. This is something that when you're downloading something over a very, very limited bandwidth or very poor connectivity, it's better to have something small whenever possible. So the idea is really to slim down, to make things as small as possible. And the idea is really to slim down your APK size. So, as I said, this is not something that you have to do only for Instant App. Maybe you're familiar with that with regular application, installable application, but there is a lot of techniques you can use. You can use resource shrinking, which consists on removing resources in your app that you're not using, especially resources brought by a dependency that you have in your application. So that will remove some binary data that is not always useful in your application. You can use code modification, which consists basically on a tree shaking. So you get the graph of your code, you tree shake it, and everything that is not connected to something that is actually in your code will get stripped out. So the tool on Android is obviously ProGuard. So if you're familiar with ProGuard, well, you're doing things correctly. And the thing is, ProGuard will also do a code obfuscation, which is kind of nice because it also kind of acts as a minification. You can use vector graphics because instead of having different images for different densities, you can have only one that consists on vector rendering. So the rendering may be better, but you may have performance issues if the image is quite complex, like having several layers on top of each other. But that's not enough. I could talk like for hours about this. So I've put a bunch of optimization you can use, and whenever you're doing that, you will slim down your application. Believe me, I've seen some example like switching from 10 megabytes to maybe 5 megabytes. So always trying to reduce as much as possible your application, like downloadable fonts, granular dependencies, dependency reduction, where.0 APK distribution, etc., etc. And if you want to have help on that, well, I think the best tool ever in the Android Studio IDE is probably the APK analyzer, because it helps you to see exactly what's happening in your APK. So the APK analyzer, in this case, is showing everything, and especially how much it is taking in your application. So you can see here that 1 megabyte, which is 65% of the APK, is taken by the source code. Okay, so this is nice to see exactly on what kind of things you can act on. But the thing is, APK Analyzer is not only working on APKs. It's actually also working on zip files, like the one that you have when you're building an instant app. So in our case here, I have like a zip file, which is called 101 zip, but it contains a base release APK, an about release APK, and a license release APK. And as you can see, the base APK is quite big. It's 1.7 megabytes, but the two features are like nothing, like 13 kilobytes is nothing in the Android world. And you can see that it's really handy if you want to look at the resources here. By the way, just by looking at it, I noticed that I could remove some languages because I'm only supporting English and French. So it's really a good way to find where some binary data gets, can be removed. And if, and only if, it's not enough, then you can use something called configuration split to the rescue. So I know that some people are always using that at the beginning, but for me, it's better to try to reduce your APK first. And if really it's too big, then you can look at some other possibilities like configuration splits. And configuration splits consist on saying that it's not necessary to bundle like French language if the device is in French. Is in English, sorry. Or it's not necessary to bundle like HDPI density if you're on XX HDPI density. So you can simply put that DSL on your in your build.gradle, and the output will be like different APKs that can be sent by the Play Store depending on, actually on the device capabilities. So this is called also split APKs, which used to be available only for ABIs, so like MISP or ARM or whatever, so the architecture of the CPU and densities, but now they have added, in the case of instant apps, the language splits. So this is pretty much it regarding performance on instant app. But once you've installed an instant app, you may want to redirect your users to the installable application. And this can be done using something called installation prompts. So inside your your instant app, you may have like this banner that I've done using Photoshop because it was not possible to. So it's photoshopped, yeah, or Affinity Designer, sorry. But the thing is here, I'm not, preventing the user from using the app. The schedule is here, but you can suggest the user that, hey, if you didn't download this application, the installable version of the application, you may have more features. Some features are only in the installable application. So you have to put those buttons very strategically, and this can be done in our case, like at the top of the list. And once you click on install, once the user is clicking on install, you can prompt or you can ask the user to install the application. And this is done thanks to the Instant App SDK. So you have to add this dependency in the dependency DSL of your Gradle file. And then in the code, it's quite simple. You have only this. So you check whether or not your application right now is running in an instant app mode. And if it is, then you can use instantapps.showInstallPrompt. And this will display exactly, I don't know if you're familiar with this, so on the web, you can sometimes, if there is a web application that is associated to a native application, you may be able to install directly from Chrome an application, and it displays a window or a dialog, and this is the exact same dialog that gets displayed in this case. So this method takes 4 arguments. The first one is obviously the context you're running in. The second one is the intent, so the intent that gets triggered once the installable application is installed. Then you have a request code, because this is the way Android works when you're starting an activity for results. And finally, a referrer, which is the referrer. And once it's done, you want to make sure that the state that has been done by the user in the instant app gets available or gets migrated to the installable application. And this can be done actually in 2 ways. And this is very important for the user experience, obviously, because you don't want your users to use the instant app application and then switch to installable application and have to redo everything. You want really to be completely fluent for them or completely smooth for the user. So you have to restore the state. And this can be done with 2 APIs. The first one is called the cookie API, which is basically the same ID than the one in the web. So here what I do is that I ask the package manager in my instant app whether or not there is, not whether or not, but whether or not the size of the cookie that I want to put is lower to a certain limit, because there is a limit, obviously, otherwise you could put like megabytes of data. But if it is, you can update the instant app cookie on the package manager, and it will get stored by the system so that the installable application can get it on the other side. And once you install the installable application, you can get this cookie, and you can do whatever you want with these cookies, like repopulate, I don't know, your shared preferences or your state or your scrolling state. You can do whatever you want. And once you're done with it, you can clear the app cookie, obviously. So this used to be the ancient way of doing stuff. But like 2 weeks ago, there was a new method that has been introduced, which is called instant app data. And it requires you to use a different SDK, which is in the Play services. So here, there is a little bit difference, which is Play services instant app. Not, if you don't put this part, then it's another SDK. And in this SDK, you can get the entire folder of your instant app, application. So you ask get instant apps clients, and once you get this client, you can ask for the instant app data. And this will give you the opportunity to get asynchronously a zip file that contains all of the files that are in your instant app file directory. And this contains actually several stuff. First, the shared preferences, all of your databases, get everything that is under get files dir, and everything that is under get dir. So it contains basically everything that you need to migrate one state from one app to the other. And there is actually some security requirements. So obviously you can't do that for all application, otherwise there will be like a security flow. But the thing is, you have to only request that data if you use the exact same package. So you have to make sure that the instant app and the installable application are using the exact same package, and you have to make sure that they are signed using the exact same signing key. Yeah, this is the limitation, obviously. So now that we know how instant app is working, you may have asked, how does it work in the real world? Well, for me, there is a lot of pros and cons, and especially there is this question: what's the difference between an instant app and a progressive web app? So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but on the web there is something similar to instant app, which is called progressive web app, which consists on downloading on demand the features, which is really similar to instant app. So from my point of view, everything depends on your context. Really, it depends on the size of your tech team, it depends on your market, your users, your quality requirements and stuff. But for me, instant apps are great if you already have a clean code base, I would say. A code base that you can easily migrate to an instant app. But as you may have understood, I mean, it's Android instant app. It's not iOS instant app, so it's only working on Android. So at one point in time, you will have to do a web version of it. So I would suggest more about going to progressive web app only if you really have to target all of the users and you don't really have already an Android app that is well architecture and ready to switch to instant app. So the idea is really like instant app has broader features, but progressive web apps have larger or broader audience. So it's really like the contrast between the two. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for attending this talk. And if you have some questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks. So there is a mic, if someone, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
You said that Instant App is available since Android 5.
Yes.
It requires permission for Android 6.
Yes.
So how does it behave on Android 5?
That's a good question. So the idea is really for the Instant App runtime to emulate everything that is actually done after Android 6. So when you're running an Instant App before Android 6, Instant App runtime will actually display a pop-up like you have on Android 6. It will ask at runtime the permission. Yeah. So the question is not finished, but yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Now you can send a link with to download of the application and to execute it.
Yeah.
But could it be a new way to do phishing attacks?
To do phishing attacks? That's a good question, but so the idea regarding Instant App is really to be the owner of the website. So in order to do that, you have to control the domain. So for me, phishing attacks is quite complicated. Maybe you can Well, if the domain is like very similar, like Google with 3 O's, maybe you can do something like that. But if you don't own the domain, the exact same domain, you can't access you can't do really phishing attacks. Maybe we can finish the question, or I can repeat it if you want.
Just to finish the question,
yeah.
If I rely on the SDK, the constant in my Java code to ask for permission, so SDK lower than Android M,
yes.
How will you be able to trigger the permission required?
Okay, so you have to target, obviously, at least Marshmallow in the Android Instant App, but you can have different target SDKs for the Instant App and the installable application. It's really 2 different applications, right?
Okay.
Since the Instant App consists of several APKs, how does the system handle the settings part with the app and install?
The settings part that gets bundled inside the
no,
settings app?
The settings UI for the user. What does the user see when he wants to uninstall the app? Does he see one single app or several APKs?
Yes. So I wanted to test all of that, but once again, it's not working perfectly. So yeah, but I've seen some screenshots, and the thing is, actually, it displays like the Instant App right inside your application. So if you're on Oreo, for instance, because there is native support for that, you will have 3 kind of apps: installable application, like the regular application, instant apps, and web apps. You can also see like Twitter Lite, for instance, that is displayed in the list of installed application in the installed application list in the settings app. So in the case of Instant App, you will have like the list of all Instant Apps that are on your device. But the Instant App runtime will handle automatically like flushing or removing Instant App that are not used. So it's really like keeping the state, but maybe it will be like destroyed 2 minutes after or 2 days after. You don't know. It's really the Instant App runtime that take care of that. So you don't have to uninstall an application. I mean, there is no installation, so it would be pointless to have like an installation. So everything is handled automatically. Yes. Sorry, I can't see. Yeah, like the sun. Yeah. Another question? Yeah.
Another one. If we already use library modules in Android Studio and Gradle,
yeah.
Can you combine feature module and library module, or should I use only feature module, and will it work with APK, full APK packaging?
Sorry, I'm not sure I've understood your question, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, okay.
But the thing is, that's a good point because you're talking about modules. So modules is not something new. I mean, it's something that has been available for a long time in Android Studio. So if you already have, like, in this case, what I did, because the feature module was not correctly working when I started in July, so I actually switched to library modules. And actually, library modules and feature modules are very similar. I mean, if you have already library modules with features on it, you can switch to the feature plugin almost automatically. The only thing that you have to do is that you have to migrate the resources that are used in your Android manifest to the base APK. This is the only difference between a feature module and a library APK. And I think this is a limitation, and I hope this won't be the case in the future, but right now you have to do that. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it's
okay. But even in a feature module, you can use a library. So you can have a dependency in a feature module on a library. This is something completely possible. But you have to make sure, once again, that your feature modules are as small as possible in order to have like the best user experience possible. Yes?
Going back to what you said about the runtime being able to delete the instant apps, does that mean that the data we saw with the instant app is going to be deleted?
Yeah.
Well?
The thing is, Instant App is like a volatile Android application. So the idea is really to be as transparent as possible for the user. So if you're not using it, your data may be flushed out. Yeah. but you're not in control of that, yeah. And this is something done by the instant app runtime. Obviously, once you upgrade or migrate an instant app to an installable application, then you have an install application and nothing gets uninstalled magically. I mean, it's like what it used to be for a long time on Android. Yes?
For application that requires an account, say Trainline, for instance, will that make sense to use Instant App to say you download a part of the app that does the creation of the account, and then you will be able to get this account information from to tell the user, well, you should, now that you've got an account, you should install the full app.
Yeah. So this is an excellent question. So I haven't talked about that. So there is no really limitations because you can do whatever you want on the Play Store, but some recommendations by Google. So if you have an account, in the case of Trainline, for instance, what we've done is that before doing an instant app, we open the app to non-account users, so that it's possible to book a train without having an account. But if you really need an account, what Google is recommending, or they're saying must, so it's not a recommendation, you should, but well, there is no enforcement of that, that you have to use smart lock for password, so that your connection to your account is as fluent or as streamlined as possible. So what's smart lock for password? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's really similar to what you have in Chrome. When you get to a website, you have to log with your credential, like email and password, and it will auto-populate because it knows about your domain and it has saved your credential. So this is the exact same equivalent, but on Android. So smart lock for password. And if you were here last year, that's why I talked about that, because it's, if you have an account, please make sure that you have that.
I just think that would be a good strategy, because you don't need to tell the user, well, please first install the app, then create your account. You can directly, with a native UI, make the user create the account and then install the full app.
Yeah, you could, yeah. That's the problem, I would say, with Instant App. That's why it's still like, it's official, but it's still like in beta because it involves a lot of changes in what we are used to as Android developers. So you have to make sure that you're not doing something wrong or bad for the user.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have no more questions. But if you have questions and you're too shy, please feel free to come. Thank you.